Welcome everyone to September's reading series presented by the Sundress Academy for the Arts. I'm Stacy Estep. I'm the reading series coordinator. And for anybody who does not know, Sundress Academy for the Arts, or SAFTA, is a writer's residency and arts collective that hosts workshops, retreats, and residencies for writers in all genres, including poetry, fiction, nonfiction, journalism, academic writing, playwriting, and more. And you can find out more at our website, sundressacademyforthearts.com. We want to say a big thank you to the Tennessee Arts Commission for the grant that makes it possible for us to pay our readers. Thank you. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about our community partner for the month. Every month we partner with an organization in the community, and this time it is the Southerners on New Ground, or SONG. SONG has been a home for LGBTQ liberation since 1993 and reaches across racial, class, and cultural lines in the South to transform the region through strategic planning, organizing, and fellowship. SONG works toward building through alliances and coalitions with other organizations that challenge systemic oppression. For more info or to donate to support LGBTQ and trans liberation, you can visit their link, which we will put in the chat. Usually we try to have a representative from the organization join us, but no one from SONG was able to join us tonight, but they did give us some talking points. So I'll tell you a little bit more about them. Since 1993, SONG has been known both regionally and nationally for organizing and training work across issues of race, class, gender, culture, and sexuality with both LGBTQ people and allies. SONG believes that social movements are one of our main hopes for liberation. Organizations are one of the key building blocks of social movements. Organizations are made up of people leaders. We build membership, or our base, as a way to build the skills, connection, and leadership of thousands of Southern rural LGBTQ people of color, immigrant people, and working class people, united together in the struggle for dignity and justice for all people. In order to transform the South, we must build our collective power, our people power, which comes from thousands and thousands of us uniting to make the South the home our communities need it to be. SONG believes that social movements are one of our, one of our main hopes for liberation. Organizations are one of the key building, I already read that part. It's on there twice, sorry about that. SONG believes in people's rights to bring their whole selves into any given space and work toward healing the brokenness resulting from living compartmentalized lives. SONG holds up joy, creativity, compassion, connectedness to earth, and a commitment to something greater than our individual selves as integral to spiritual survival. Currently, SONG is building up a Knoxville crew with hopes to establish a member chapter. And last February, they hosted a virtual Song Fest with music, creative artists, and activists. Their crew has been instrumental in mutual aid work to support our unhoused neighbors, while also speaking out against the 278G program by the local sheriff to detain immigrants. You can follow them at their Instagram page, link in the chat, and visit their website, also link in the chat. It's southernersonnewground.org. So please do support the important work these folks are doing. All right, so we'll get started with, there's a cat fight going on behind me. I'm so sorry. Zoom, the magic of Zoom. Okay, our first reader tonight is Laura Passon. Laura is the author of Borrowing Your Body from Riot in Your Throat. This is forthcoming next month, you said? Excellent, congratulations. And All Sex and No Story from Rabbit Catastrophe Press. She earned her PhD in English Literature at Northwestern and her MFA in Creative Writing at the University of Oregon. Her writing has appeared in a wide range of publications, including Prairie Schooner, Glass, a journal of poetry, The Toast, Rolling Stone, Electric Literature, and Best New Poets. Her work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net anthology. Laura lives in Denver with too many pets. Please welcome Laura Passon.
Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be here. First of all, thank you so much to Sundress for having me. It's a an organization I have admired for a really long time. And it's a really wonderful time for me to be part of this series because shameless self-promotion, my book, Borrowing Your Body, is coming out on November 1st. And it is still available at the pre-order price of $10 for, I think, 24 more hours. So if you find yourself inspired, you can pick it up for the pre-order price. My editor is in the audience, so I feel if I didn't say that, I would regret it later. I'm going to read mostly poems from Borrowing Your Body, plus a couple of new poems. So I'm going to start with the poem where the title phrase comes from. This poem is called "You Are Not God's Sparrow." And if that rings a bit of a bell for you, it's a reference to a Bible verse, Matthew 10:29 and 30, which I'm just going to remind you of how that goes, the King James Version. "Are not two sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father, but the very hairs of your head are all numbered." So this poem is a response to that, the idea that God has always got your back. So it's called "You Are Not God's Sparrow." Space is trying to murder you. It's not personal. Nature abhors an individual. Skin is permeable. Voyager pierced the flesh of interstellar space, a gold needle carrying the 1970s, a flashy curse on other suns. That void that is not a void can swallow you up, yank you around, smash you through. Go on existing. You are gravity and surface tension and air pressure, cerebrospinal fluid, gut microflora, skull sutures. You eat atoms egested by supernovas before the earth was born. You borrowed your body. You get to keep your name. So a lot of Borrowing Your Body, thank you. A lot of Borrowing Your Body deals with the experience that I had watching my mother suffer from dementia and aphasia related to, among other things, early onset Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. So a lot of the book deals with the what it's like to experience watching somebody go through dementia. So the next few poems are about that. This one is called aphasia, which is a particular medical term. On the page, it starts with an etymology of aphasia, but I have never been able to figure out how to read an etymology out loud. So I'm going to instead start with the definition and then go into the poem. So this is aphasia. And the definition is pathological, a loss of speech, partial or total, or loss of power to understand written or spoken language as a result of the disorder of the cerebral speech centers. So that's the definition of aphasia. 1, on the phone, you are failing the Turing test. In the static, I hear the stasis of your tongue. 2, bad daughter that I am, I did not think of you once today. I didn't think of the bump beneath your hair where the shunt crosses the skin of your brain. I didn't hear the echo of your broken voice over my thoughts as I read. I didn't wonder how long it takes you to climb the split-level stairs of our family house, whether you are trapped inside so you can stay safe. I didn't imagine your neurons throwing their electrical arcs into walls of dead matter. I didn't feel my hand cramp in anticipation of the forms I will sign sooner than I can face. Didn't picture the sterile light of a hospital room we will decorate, not knowing if you can notice such things. I forgot you today for hours, and my own skull felt clear and ordered. A clock with no hands. 3, you bought my first dictionary from a dusty bookshop so I could go to college camp the island of misfit teens. In my room, I unwrapped the plastic and markered my name on the inside cover. I didn't know then what your gift would unlock, the secret world of words and their birth pangs. I traced the dialects snaking across the map of North America. I climbed each branch of the linguistic tree. I arrowed back in time to Proto-Indo-European, the hidden names of names. Yours, Barbara, from the Greek, barbaros, a barbarian, a stranger who cannot speak. Thank you. Thank you all. I really appreciate the feedback and chat and all that. This one is also about dementia. This is a list poem, which is, pretty straightforward, but if you have ever given care for somebody with dementia, I think hopefully you will know why it's a list poem. So it's called Things She's Forgotten. How to make coffee. What you do after you open a car door. Her street address. To check the mail. Her fear of cats. The names of sons. Her wedding dress. How much it cost. Her college town and all its streets. The book she kept. The book she threw away. Her tiny dog named George. Her mother's house. Her maiden name. What she wanted. What it is to want. Let's see. This next poem, just checking time. I think I'm good. Okay. This next poem is also about my mom, and it is called Elegy for My Mother as Cyborg. This is, my mom had multiple brain diseases, but that caused the dementia. And at one point she had brain surgery where they installed a shunt from her brain to drain cerebrospinal fluid. And that was a very peculiar time for her. So this is a reflection on that. Elegy for My Mother as Cyborg. You wrote by hand, and that's how I knew something terrible and mighty was happening to you. The words that unspelled themselves, the dates scratched out and written wrong again. When the surgeon installed the shunt in your brain that ran like a plastic vein to your stomach, you couldn't stop touching the foreign piece of your body, fingering the tube running under the skin of your neck, unable to imagine what new creature you'd become. And I have one more very sad mom poem, and then a little bit of a shift to newer poems. This is the final poem in the book. It's called The Learned Astronomer on the Radio. And it's a nod to Walt Whitman's classic poem, When I Heard the Learned Astronomer, which was one of my mom's favorite. But it's also totally based on a Radiolab episode. So if you're a Radiolab fan, you probably also, like me, think, oh my God, there's got to be a poem about this one. So this was my attempt at that. Hearing a cosmologist, I think Brian Greene, but I'm not 100% sure if my memory is right on that, talking about the implications of an infinite universe. So, The Learned Astronomer on the Radio. Given an infinite universe, given a finite body, given the bounding constellations of atoms that trace the flesh, we must accept, the cosmologist says, that we are twinned. Inside of infinity, the theory goes, any finite pattern must repeat. Even our doubles are doubled, uncanny almost selves, with one atom changed, one more gray hair, one breath not taken. Our doppelgangers think, as we do, that their world is unique. They hear this scientist's shadow, the same unearthly lecture, and think back in our direction, inhumanly far across the dark beyond. Not beyond, another here. Through the night air lives another me, blonde maybe, or farsighted. There's a world where I'm kinder, where I love olives and Oliver Twist. Light years away, a set of atoms conjures my mother, awake, unharmed. She walks without help. She can speak a full sentence. She can sign her name. She will die of old age. This is certain. The good doctor tells me so. My almost mother turns off the radio, adjusts the light in perfect silence. She wants to read. Her daughter writes this down. So I have two more poems for you tonight. They are both newer. And the first one is so I wrote about grief a lot, and then I got kind of, as many of us have, I think, obsessed with climate change and how maybe individual grief is not really the end all be all of what we need to be worrying about. So this poem is sort of myself talking to myself about that. It's called Grief Counseling in the Late Anthropocene. And if you're not familiar with that term, Anthropocene, it is the proposed term for the geologic era we're living in, where humans, have messed up the world so much that we need a new term for it, the era we're in. So this is Grief Counseling in the Late Anthropocene. When the world ends, it will not matter who exactly left it early. The years shaved off the living heart, the brain cells torqued and plaqued by damaged genes. It will not matter that once the Cuyahoga lit up like a factory dying, that the water bequeathed to the Great Lakes by tired glaciers corroded ships and fish alike. What we leave behind is massive, minute, a layer of unusual soil that circles a moment, a diseased ring in the globe's bark. That's how we figured out what ate the dinosaurs. A strange signature everywhere. No one will miss us. We are the comet ourselves. And I have one more poem for you. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. This is really special. This final poem is a very recent poem. I wrote it this summer. It is, so I'm a high school teacher at a high school for girls, and I teach the Odyssey in Emily Wilson's translation. In fact, I'm teaching it like right now, like that's what I did all day today. So this poem is about my students last year in teaching the Odyssey, and it is called Poem in Which I Fail to Teach Homer. So, poem in which I fail to teach Homer. When Sally Ride suited up for America, the NASA engineers asked her if 100 tampons was the correct number for one 32-year-old woman to spend 1 week in space. That is not the correct number, she said. I tell this to my students because they are teenage girls and they already know the world thinks they are a mystery. We know more about the surface of Jupiter. The engineers counted everything, limited even the souvenirs each astronaut could take because pound for pound, fuel was so precious. How many gallons of menstrual blood did they calculate for? What horror as they imagined a female body escaping the Earth. In class, we are talking about Penelope, how she fooled the suitors for 3 years because they knew nothing of weaving, of women's work. Didn't they get suspicious? One girl asks. Once, I told my dad I had PMS for 6 weeks straight, and he believed me, replied another. Men don't know anything. They hate Odysseus, these girls. They have him pegged as the villain. When I was in school, they wheeled an ancient television into our classroom one day, spent eternities hooking every plug to every socket. And then we watched 7 people die live on TV. Sally Ride was scheduled for the next mission. She never flew again. My students don't know about the Challenger explosion. They are living through different disasters. They are angrier than I knew how to be at 15. Why does it matter if Penelope is faithful when Odysseus sleeps with every woman he meets, they ask. I tell them it doesn't matter to us, but it matters to Ithaca. Ithaca isn't fair. When Odysseus, salt-crusted and naked, flirts with Nausicaa, so young that she still plays catch, my girls talk about the grown men who follow them, the men who call after them, the men who scare them. I'm sorry this happens to you. I say it happened to me too. Earth isn't fair. Sally Ride knew the Challenger inside and out. She lived in that ship, further at sea than Odysseus could dream of. In the press conference before launch, they asked, "Do you ever cry on the job?" When Penelope weeps, Homer says her mind moves elsewhere. No one knows what she knows. Thank you so much. This is a great pleasure. I'm really excited to hear the other readers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was amazing. Great work. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody, please check the chat for Laura's book. You can buy check out all of our readers have, the links will be in the chat so you can buy their work, visit their website. Please support these great folks. Okay, our second reader tonight is Susan Nguyen. She hails from Virginia, but currently lives and writes in Arizona. She earned her MFA in poetry from Arizona State University, where she won the Elida Rodriguez Memorial Prize and fellowships from the Virginia G. Piper Center for Creative Writing. In 2018, PBS NewsHour named her one of 3 women poets to watch. Her work appears in Diagram, Tin House, and elsewhere. She writes a lot about identity, the body, and the Vietnamese diaspora, and also likes to make zines. Her debut collection, Dear Diaspora, won the 2020 Prairie Schooner Book Prize in Poetry and was published by the University of Nebraska Press on September 1st, 2021. You can visit her at susanpoet.com. Please welcome Susan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being in this space with us. And Laura, your reading was amazing. I'm excited for your book, and thank you for reading some new work as well. That was really, really wonderful. I have no new work, so I haven't really been writing that much the past year. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and thank you everyone for just being in this space. I know the past year, I have signed up for a lot of online events and have not attended a lot of them just because by the time they arrived, my bandwidth, just wasn't there. So I really appreciate you making the time. I'm excited to read some poems from my book that came out earlier this month, Dear Diaspora. This collection really is, a lot of it was for me, my way of processing and trying to better understand what it meant to be part of the Vietnamese diaspora, and just my Vietnamese identity, which I spent a really long time just ignoring or pushing away. So there was a lot I didn't know, and eventually that caught up to me. And luckily, through writing and through poetry, I came to understand some things and also arrive at some self-forgiveness as well. So in this collection, I write about a character, Susie with an I. There are some third-person poems where Susie may appear a bit younger and just adolescence in America. And then there's also kind of this older, I guess, I voice that maybe is more reflective and can speak to and about the diaspora in a different way with some distance. So I think that's all you really need to know. And I think for me, writing in third person just allowed me to talk about my experiences and view my younger self with some tenderness. I was having a hard time doing just all of first person poems. So I'm going to jump around a little bit in the book. The first language. 1. Behind the church, we ran through labyrinths of poplar and hickory, dirt paths cutting through ravines and the backs of suburban homes, their brick patios and striped furniture. In the green light of summer, we loved getting lost, how we could step into woods and exit in a cul-de-sac 8 blocks away. Loved it best when tadpoles formed a halo around our toes. 2. Before he disappeared, my father taught me how to catch tadpoles in my hand. The trick wasn't just to stay still, but to stop breathing. He caught dozens like this, knees bent and pant legs folded, his face inches above the creek. He taught me that our first language was named after tadpoles, the way they moved through water, a knife dissecting the stratosphere, a voice cutting quiet. 3. My third favorite memory of him is walking hand in hand on 2-lane roads, identifying Virginia trees. In one pocket, a zodiac sign lighter, a button for mother's favorite blouse. In the other, acorns for burying. I can still identify the red oaks. 4. Today, the tadpoles flow through my fingers like an egg yolk. My impulse is to cradle one in my mouth. The tadpole swims circles and my tongue follows, mapping its movement before spitting. Susie with an I is not afraid of the dark or the things that move in its current. She approaches school like she approaches most things, eyes narrowed, scanning the edges of sight. When she scribbles her name, she dots the I, rubs the sharp graphite onto her finger. Before bed, she says, "Our Father, our Father, our Father, our Father," as fast as she can. The fastest was in Sunday school. Highlighting the Virgin Mary pink, she drowned out the counselor's drone with prayer. Tonight, she turns her blinds inward. Through a tiny sliver, the moon spoils the dark. She doesn't know about the war times because her father wouldn't speak about the war times. She knows her father met a man during war times who would later introduce him to her mother. That man is now her uncle. She knows that before war times, her father was in college. He liked to camp, play volleyball. After the war times, her father and his family dried areca nuts and betel leaves to sell, to stain teeth black. When her mother biked past on the way to teach preschool, he stood in his doorway and stared. Nothing existed during the war times or before or now in its aftermath. There's only her father. He's somewhere unknown. Oops, I got my Outlook calendar up. So the title of my collection, Dear Diaspora, comes from a series of poems I have dispersed throughout the collection called Letter to the Diaspora. And the first line really is Dear Diaspora. It kind of started out as a placeholder because I honestly could not think of a title. Like Laura, you had really amazing poem titles, but titles for poems and are hard for me. And the collection as a whole was very hard. But the more I kept saying it, it stuck, and the more it made sense. So I have a few of these. They all started out as one longer poem, and then after some time, I kind of broke them apart. And it's one of the threads running throughout my collection. So this one is the first one that appears in the collection. And the second line is crossed out. So that's what I mean when I say strike through. Letter to the Diaspora. Dear Diaspora, I believe in the American dream, strike through. Last night, I had the American dream. In the dream, I had an indoor pool. In the dream, I walked my dead dog with a diamond leash. I ate a greasy burger with my perfect hands. I had the most beautiful sex. My skin was smooth, alabaster as the moon. In the morning, everything had changed. There was no pool, only twine for drying clothes. The dead remained dead. My perfect hands held nothing. Nothing was better. This next poem is called Cicada Summer, and if y'all are from the East Coast and you know about the cicadas, that's where, yeah, that's all you need to know, I guess. Cicada summer. The cicadas come from the ground and enter the world in currents, streaming down tree trunks, over branches, across sidewalks and roads, the males pulsing their abdomens, singing for sex. In the field behind the school, Susie and her classmates stand still as dozens climb over their bodies, careful not to crush the winged insects beneath their feet, fearful of littering the ground with broken glass. Susie collects every wing she can find. Each one becomes a small body of water she carries in her pocket, a broken window pane she holds to each eye. She counts dozens more on her way home and imagines how they would taste. Hands in her pocket, touching the wings to each fingertip, she wonders, would they still sing on the way to death, and would it sound any different? Today, she walks through uneven fields of green and spits into tall grass, the roots of trees, listens as the clicking of cicadas fills her body with song. The green lacerates her ankles, and she imagines her blood mixed with dirt will nourish, will add to the muscle tremor of the earth. Wish list. Susie plucks the occasional white hair from her mother's head and all the stiff hairs from her powdered armpit. Each dozen is worth a dime. This is her only allowance. She used to pluck her father's white hairs too, but when they spread to his sideburns and eyebrows, her mother bought black hair dye from CVS. When Susie first asks for an allowance, her mother doesn't know the meaning of the word. Who pays for your food, gives you a roof to sleep under? The next day, she tells all her nail lady friends who whoop for days. And who raised her like that? Susie adds allowance to her wish list for a bourgeois life alongside a waterbed, family vacations to Disney World, a minivan with built-in video player, Lisa Frank school supplies, fondue sets, the wooden tree swing. I'm really glad I said bourgeois. I think I said that right. I don't know. I always mess that one up. I hope that was right. I just have a few more. In a past life, mother was a preschool teacher, 5 a.m. churchgoer. Outside her house, grandfather cut hair. To his right was grandmother selling firework powder, air drying fish bought in Bumtao, and bussed back on grandmother's lap. In a past life, mother ran up and down the stairs to stroke the 10-hour fire, burning under glutinous rice. After 75, she was bused to a field, stepped barefoot into mud, dug irrigation systems, afraid of what she might step on. When grandfather fell, no one knew the word stroke. Grandmother rubbed oil on his hands and feet, sold MSG. In a past life, mother woke up to the sound of cyclones notching the roads. When grandmother died, mother flew back and tied white linen around her head in mourning. It was not like the first time on the plane when they served packets of peanut butter and jelly, Concord grape. I stole dozens. I did not know if I would see them again. Sorry, I'm losing my page number. Okay. Grief as a question. Do you have a permit to sit under the sky? Green is the color of my ecstasy. Lying in the roots of a tree, I want to inhale it. Everywhere I go, I cannot get away. Things that glow. Jellyfish, nightlight, screensaver, the first daffodil to show itself. Grass stains, tennis ball, glow in the dark constellations, electric energy drink, key lime sour between teeth, queen moth, praying mantis, inchworm, sour green apple, soft at the bruises, caterpillars taking over roads and sidewalks, placed in jars covered in saran wrap with poked holes for air, a twig and some grass. Virginia fireflies. We caught them and put an eye to our hands, making empty fists, shook them. By next morning, they no longer glowed. We turned our jars upside down. No one told me grief could be so ordinary. I think I'll just read one last poem. I'm just checking my time here. Okay. Ode to Hunger. Thank you for putting stuff in the chat. I'll have to read that later, but I appreciate the energy. Ode to Hunger. Praise spam fried with fish sauce and sugar, jackfruit, 25 pounds of it carved on newspaper, latex sap sticking fingers. Praise Kraft mac and cheese, small miracle of powdered cheddar, pork floss in the big Tupperware, Sara Lee. Praise soy sauce and rice, shrimp cup noodles, 3 minutes till done. Praise the soft insides of baguettes, the first star fruit pocketed and sliced. To Chef Boyardee, to durian, sweet scent of garbage. To pickled mustard greens, lean cuisine, pizza bagels after school. Praise women, infants, and children, banana blossoms, hearts thinly sliced in vinegar, drained of all color. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you, Susan. Beautiful work. This is a great session we're having tonight. Again, please check the chat so you can find the link where you can buy Susan's book. And our final reader tonight is Robin Rosen Chang. She's the author of the full-length poetry collection, The Curator's Notes, from Terrapin Books 2021. Her poems appear or are forthcoming in Michigan Quarterly Review, The Journal, Diode, North American Review, Poet Lore, Cream City Review, Valparaiso Poetry Review, and other literary journals and anthologies. She's the recipient of the Oregon Poetry Association's Fall 2018 Poets' Choice Award, an honorable mention for Spoon River Poetry Review's 2019 Editors Prize, and a 2021 Pushcart nominee. She has an MFA from the Program for Writers at Warren Wilson College. You can find her online at robinrosenchang.com. Please welcome Robin.
Thank you so much. I just want to first thank Sundress Academy for the arts and for inviting me to participate, and to Laura and Susan for your beautiful poetry, and for everyone who's come out tonight. I'm going to read from my new debut full-length collection, The Curator's Notes. This book engages with loss, beauty, and love, and it explores how identity, particularly feminine identity, collective identity, and individual identity are shaped by the stories we inherit. But it's also really a meditation on grief and beauty and love as well. So I'm going to start with a poem that prefaces the collection. And I'm just going to turn on my timer so I know I don't go over. This is called My Mother Was Water. She used to say they didn't know how she got pregnant with me because my father was married to his work. I think about them, how he and his work might have dined together. My father in his blue and white polka dotted bow tie, across from work, a mess demanding, look at me, I need you to do this now. And where they would have slept, the space work took up in bed. But really, I knew my mother so turbulent, she was water, a river, torrid and trying to flow uphill, and he, a dam at the bottom, imploring gravity, pulled down her wild current. I think I was a pebble between them, too light to lodge myself in the silt. I decided to be a fish, brown and speckled, to camouflage myself in mud and rocks, refusing to swim upstream or downstream. I wondered about land, how hospitable it might be. This next poem also has to do with stories that we inherit, and it's called Lore. Besides the eyes, I've always denied any similarity to my mother. But I too worry about birds, the lone egret standing at lake's edge, one leg buckled backwards. For flight, its wings beat only 2 times per second. I saw one preening its white feathers the day my mother died. If I could, I'd ask her, why have a 5th child when you were out of love and had options? I knew I was a mistake. In nature, birds do what is necessary. Most nurture the young, but some won't feed the weak. Others push eggs from the nest. The book deals, this next poem is called Futility. The book deals a lot with loss, and so these next 2 poems focus on that. Futility. I'm here, I say to her, over a metal bar, keeping her in the bed she scarcely occupies. I want to comfort her, rub her rutted back. I can't. I'm here, I repeat. I'm here. Her body burrows into itself like she's going, time traveling, back to nothing. Riptide. My mother's arm reaches out of the water and slides back in. Then the other arm. Repeatedly, they appear and disappear as they move her through the turbulent ocean. She's swimming diagonal to the shoreline, almost like someone caught in a riptide. But she's not. She's going calmly, of her own volition, retreating from the beach where I lie. I squeeze my shut eyes hard. A sliver of her face appears, a waning moon, when her head turns after every second stroke. Her mouth opens just enough to pull an air that holds life in her. Fixed on something she seems to see, she keeps going. She doesn't struggle. The current doesn't batter her. It doesn't carry her off. She's a white spot in the water. She's taking herself away. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. This next poem takes place in the form of a conversation. It's titled, "A Woman in the A&P Asks Me Where I Got My Baby." He was dropped off, aisle 9, International Foods, eye level on a shelf between Goya and La Choy. How funny, but really? Somewhere murky and lightless, the bottom of the Pacific, the Mariana Trench, prehistoric hinge-jawed fish idling blindly by. He couldn't breathe, his lungs suspended in his tiny chest, waiting for oxygen to ignite them. Rolls her eyes. I thought maybe you'd been on a waiting list. No, wait. I found him at a laundromat, naked on top of towels, towels still dry or hot, so hot they hatched him because he was an egg, a cracked egg, and they were 100% Pima, stacked to where absence turns blue. You know what I mean. Fine. The truth is, he straddled the red band of my aurora borealis, the reddest band above the neon greens. He surfed the wind, rode vaporous waves. A trail of sepia clouds flowed behind him. I wrote that after, that's actually an old poem, but 2 days in a row, people, when I lived in the South, asked me where I had gotten my child. So anyway, the next poem was written when I was living in Barcelona. It's called Pears. At the fruiteria, I speak Spanish. Ask something simple like the price of pears. ¿Cuáles, señora, las peras conferencias o las blanquillas? The shopkeeper replies, rapid fire. Since I'm not fluent in the language of getting things done and don't know Spain's pear varieties, I say gracias and go to the bananas I don't want. A moment later, a small boy in untied sneakers asks the shopkeeper a question. By himself, he weighs 3 green pears, prints the price label, and sticks it onto the paper bag. I imagine how he'll wait for days until his mother picks a ripened pear from the bowl on the windowsill, takes the paring knife, the one with the brown handle worn to the shape of her fingers, and cuts it into chunks. He'll grab piece after piece, his fingers squashing them into his mouth, sweet pear juice running down his chin. On my kitchen counter, the bananas will blacken. I have 2 poems left. This next one, the title runs right into the first line. When my husband says something about desire, I think about the moon and about the body as if it were pure ocean, full of driving energy, its tides rising and rising before they collapse into spume. I think about the way the full moon's glow spurs passion and lust, even in animals, a frenzy of mass spawning, coral, too many to count, all spewing their seed into the Great Barrier Reef on the very same luminescent night. Or the eagle owl revealing its secret white neck feathers as it calls out for its mate. What's more, the moon's name. In Spanish, luna, so seductive. The tongue touches the mouth's roof before the lips protrude to form the ooh sound, luna, inviting another's lips in. Which brings to mind my love and how he thrums his tongue when he rolls his Spanish R's. Amor, have you noticed the moon so bright tonight and how luna ends in ah? And the last poem, thank you. The last poem I'm going to do is newer, and it's not part of this book, although it very well could be because it deals with some of the same thematic concerns. It's called Hoodoos, And hoodoos are that geologic formation that you find in Bryce Canyon. Hoodoos. Beyond this ledge, a plateau, rippling stone cones and spires, capped in flat rock, rows of pink and orange, one behind the next, like lines of soldiers. I think about you, Father, standing at attention, hand raised, peaked white cap, officer, military intelligence, airborne. I knew almost nothing else. You rarely spoke of those years. You never met combat. You did say that when we asked. You started smoking in the Marines. Later, the cancer. You were speechless. Still, somehow you managed to sing from the halls of Manta. You don't know, but I found photos once by mistake when I was a child, saw them again after you died, a body by the side of a road, not alive. I felt mute too. These hoodoos, fairy chimneys, do they cast magic, voodoo? And this bee, almost frozen mid-air, its wings, their thin veins like solder holding them together, lifting it, the unlikely physics of its suspension. Perhaps like a helicopter carrying soldiers, carrying you. Its tiny striped body moored above my hand, where I'm sitting on the edge of this ledge, instead of where it should be, flitting in blue columbine, ripe with pollen. I can't help see you, marooned, unflinching. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was wonderful. Let's all give another round of applause for all of our readers. Everybody was great. Please visit the chat to support their work. And I would like to open it up to Q&A if anybody has any questions. We have about 5 minutes left. Anybody have any questions for our readers? Please go ahead and pipe up. Or if you just want to keep giving applause and compliments, that's great too. And readers, feel free to ask questions of each other.
I think the question I would ask Susan and Laura is just, how you let yourself go, where you need to go in a poem, right? Sometimes it's a little scary to let go and to go into that depth, right?
I guess I'll start and attempt at an answer. I agree, Robin, and I think that's a thing that maybe united all three of our readings, even though we have different styles, is sort of exploring some of those places. For me, after my mom died, I wasn't writing a lot of poems when she was actively ill, which was for several years, except occasionally the Things She's Forgotten poem that I wrote kind of during that time, but everything else came much after. And for me, it really felt like the writing was actually not going to the dark place, but like coming out of it, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying that I don't believe it's in poetry as therapy. That's not what I mean. But for me, like watching somebody, you know, one of the characteristics of what happened in my family was that my mom lost her ability to speak. And so it wasn't just about like dementia and the usual things that go along with that, but like literally losing her expressive ability and along with cognition. And so it felt, when I started to be able to think about putting language to being the daughter in that experience, it felt like, even though I know it's very, I know how people react to these poems, they find them very sad, but for me, they're not as sad because they're about finding language in a place that didn't have language when I was going through it. So that's a weird answer, but like that, but I think that it was, you know, sometimes you just have to be willing to acknowledge, like, it's not like digging out a dark place, but just acknowledge the place that you already were or are with language. So thank you, Jess, for saying that's not weird. Jess is one of my best friends and was actually there for some of that time. So she knows how real that answer is. So yeah, I would love to hear Susan's thoughts on that too.
Yeah, thank you, Robin, for the question, and Laura for going first. I think, I mean, you know, I guess I kind of agree with what you said, Laura. We are obviously writing about different things, but I guess for me, I mentioned this a bit earlier, but I spent a long time just like, I don't know, wanting to be white, growing up in America, like doing all that, and not really paying attention to the history and context of like how my family ended up being here. And it was just like eventually became really uncomfortable to not know such a huge part of my own identity. So then I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go get my MFA and write poetry, you know, because I was like, I don't know what else to do with this uncomfortableness except to like dig in deeper. But even then in my MFA, I spent a lot of my MFA not writing about it. I was focused on other topics, which is totally fine. And then occasionally I'd write a more family related or oriented poem and be like, this is whatever, like, you know. So even then I was kind of not really digging in, but in a sense. And then I was like, wait, I should probably figure this out, like what's going on here. And it was until the very end of my MFA, which was my third year of it, that I kind of looked towards those poems and was like, why am I avoiding writing about this, you know? Like, what does this mean? What's going on there? And yeah, not poetry in replacement of therapy or anything, but I think for me, poetry and writing helps me kind of just better process something, especially when it's difficult, because if you ask me just to like answer a question directly about it, I don't know if I could, or at least not very easily, right? And then I'm letting my poetry do some of that work. Not that some of these poems are even straightforward either, you know, but that's kind of how it helps me think through and kind of respond to that. I hope that made sense, but yeah. What about you, Robin?
You know, it's funny. I think that it also helped me process and understand and maybe conceptualize, find a way to understand things that were going on. A lot of the poems in my book, also my mother also had a terrible form of dementia and died pretty slowly. And even when before she fell ill, she wasn't always very well. So I have written about that, and it was really difficult. And I tend to avoid reading some of the more difficult poems out loud. So especially if I feel something's being recorded. And but yeah, I think it was actually really great to do it, but it took a little exercise to learn how to just like go there and stop censoring myself. And then I felt that the poems were those were probably the better poems, the ones where I didn't censor. But it takes practice, right? Little faith, I guess, to that what you're doing is worthwhile, so that you go, and it can be painful.
Thank you all for those answers. It was great for you to share that with us. Well, I would just like to thank you all again for being here. And I want to remind you to please donate to our September community partner. That's the Southerners on New Ground. The information is in the chat, so you can find out more about the work that they do. Their website is southernersonnewground.org. And I want to invite you also back to join us here on Zoom on October 13th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Striking Illumination, Erasure as Evacuation Workshop. This will be a workshop led by Jenny De La O, and participants will practice 3 types of erasures using their own source material or sample material provided in the session. That sounds really fun. So you can find out more about that on our Facebook page, link in the chat. And then also next month's reading, that'll be October 27th, again at 7 p.m. Eastern. That'll be the release for our newest anthology, Nambono, Anthology of Speculative Poetry by BIPOC creators, featuring numerous contributors and hosted by editor Akua Leslie Hope. And you can find out more about that by following us on our social media. I want to thank you all again for being here. Thank you to our wonderful readers for sharing your fantastic work. Please support these writers by going to the chat and finding the links to their books. Thank you for all of our audience members for supporting the arts during these strange times that we're all in. And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you again.
Yeah, I just want to do one last thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same. This was really great. And Susan and Robin, thank you so much. I loved your work. So
Oh, likewise. I'm going to look for your books.
yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Thank you, Alexa, for
Bye.
getting the chat.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you so much.
you,
Alexa.
Alexa. Bye.
Bye.